ciclo de conferencias del Departamento de Geografía. Hoy, 29 de octubre, vamos a tener una sesión específica para celebrar el Día del Geógrafo. Entonces, pues voy a dar la palabra a Francisco Maturana y John Williams Montoya para la presentación que vamos a tener. En primer lugar, sobre el lanzamiento de libros que han editado y la conferencia de la geógrafa Denise Pumin.
¿Aló? ¿Me escuchan?
Sí, se escucha.
Sí, escuchamos.
Es que tengo un problema aquí, no sé por qué no me deja activar. Bueno, ¿me
Estamos
están
viendo la
escuchando?
portada.
Ok, listo. Entonces creí que no estaba bien. Bueno, muy buenos días para todos. Es muy agradable tenerlos aquí en esta actividad. Hoy hemos organizado también, también como conmemoración del Día del Geógrafo, un saludo fraternal para todos los geógrafos y geógrafos, por supuesto, en nuestro día. Y en ocasión de esta situación tan especial, pues hemos organizado hoy, se ha organizado hoy con la dirección de la profesora Liz, dos actividades. Una, la del lanzamiento del libro Sistemas Urbanos en América Latina, el Caribe y Estados Unidos, un libro coeditado entre Francisco Maturana y mi persona, y también el lanzamiento de la revista Cuadernos de Geografía que seguirá después de este evento. Para el lanzamiento del libro logramos la participación de la doctora Denise Pumin, que nos va a presentar una conferencia. Ya más adelante Francisco la presentará, pero pues ha sido todo un honor, un privilegio que nos acompañe en el día de hoy. En ese sentido, pues yo empezaría en la presentación del libro subrayando el agradecimiento, primero que todo, a los autores. Este es un proyecto que arrancó en el año 2018. Terminamos los escritos en el 2019, como en octubre, y solamente hasta mayo vio la luz. No es que haya sucedido nada particular, sino que es simplemente la naturaleza, digamos, de estos procesos editoriales, y requiere mucha dedicación y mucha paciencia de todos los autores. Por lo tanto, a todos los autores, pues un agradecimiento enorme por haber mantenido, digamos, la fe en el proyecto y haberlo logrado llevar a feliz término. También un agradecimiento para Francisco, que estuvo permanentemente al frente y pendiente de ese proyecto. También para el Departamento de Geografía y la Facultad de Ciencias Humanas, que patrocinan este tipo de proyectos editoriales con recursos, con personal. Y un saludo muy especial, no sé si haya algún miembro del Centro Editorial de la Facultad de Ciencias Humanas, un agradecimiento muy especial, pues, porque son ellos los que colocan todos estos textos que tenemos nosotros en Word, con gráficos a veces no muy bonitos, los colocan en un producto editado, corregido, diagramado, etcétera, etcétera. La labor del Centro Editorial de la Facultad de Ciencias Humanas es de verdad encomiable, es uno de los componentes de la facultad más valioso, y creo que es importante resaltar ante la comunidad ese rol que a veces parece un poco desapercibido porque solo vemos los productos finales. Bueno, después de estos agradecimientos, paso rápidamente a presentar de qué se trató este libro. Como señalaba, es un proyecto que ya duró más o menos 2 años y medio, casi 3 tal vez, no, casi 3 años. Y el propósito que establecimos en un comienzo era el de producir un texto que hiciera una caracterización de los sistemas urbanos nacionales. Ese fue en lo esencial el objetivo. Para ello, sobre todo con la ayuda de Francisco, que tiene una red bastante amplia de colegas en América Latina, se buscaron autores en toda la región, desde México pasando por Honduras, Costa Rica, Colombia, Venezuela, Perú, Ecuador, Bolivia, por supuesto Chile, Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina. Esos son los países de los autores. Encontramos, digamos, especialistas que pudiesen desarrollar cada uno de los capítulos. Además, incorporamos América del Norte. Para ello tuvimos la valiosa colaboración de la doctora Ambre Tañol, y se incluyeron también dos capítulos, un capítulo teórico sobre la evolución de las ciudades que elaboró la doctora Denise Pumán, y un capítulo también general sobre el sistema urbano de América Latina que presento yo. Bien, esa era la idea, y es pertinente, digamos, subrayar que el estudio de sistemas urbanos pues es un componente muy clásico de la geografía y de los estudios urbanos, y tiene un valor importante no solamente académico, digamos, y de enseñanza, etcétera, etcétera, sino también un valor importante en términos de gestión y planificación del desarrollo nacional y del desarrollo regional. Este es un poco algunos de los contenidos. Este es un libro de casi 400 páginas, muy bien editado, a color, etcétera, etcétera, que se distribuye por el Centro Editorial de la Facultad de Ciencias Humanas a través de su página web. La página web se ha modernizado bastante, y entonces distribuimos, o se distribuye mejor, que se distribuye como PDF para toda América Latina. Se puede comprar en cualquier parte del mundo prácticamente como un PDF, y hay más restricciones, digamos, para la adquisición del impreso, pero creo que esa estrategia de vender en formato digital es supremamente importante. Entonces, una invitación al uso de este texto, al uso del libro en los procesos de docencia, a la lectura de ellos también en las lógicas, digamos, de evaluar un poco las dinámicas urbanas regionales de América Latina, y pues queda a disposición del público. Muchas gracias. Yo le cedo la palabra ahora a Francisco, que va a presentar a la doctora Denise y que va a continuar con la conferencia.
Muchas gracias, John. Supongo que se escucha, ¿cierto?
Perfecto, sí.
Ya. Sí, bueno, muy buenos, bueno, para todavía buenos días a todos, a todas, para los que estamos aquí en América Latina. Y bueno, y ya en Europa será muy buenas tardes. Primero agradecer a John, ¿cierto?, por esta colaboración. John ya indicó todo lo que estuvimos trabajando en este texto, y realmente creo que es un muy buen balance que se realiza en términos de los sistemas urbanos en el contexto de América. Y bueno, y voy a presentar brevemente a la doctora Denise Pimá. Para mí es un honor poder contar, ¿cierto?, con su presentación. Ella es geógrafa de profesión, quizás es una de las geógrafas cuantitativas, yo diría, más importantes en los últimos años, ¿cierto?, que tenemos a nivel mundial. Aparte de eso, creo que es muy pertinente para lo que se enmarca lo que tratamos en el texto en términos de sus reflexiones que ha realizado en torno a la distribución de la población, a cómo se comporta esa distribución en la jerarquía de las ciudades, esta teoría evolutiva de las ciudades que la profesora Denise Pima habla en tres escalas espaciotemporales, y que en el primer capítulo del texto a mí me parece que logra plasmar un poco toda esa discusión, y también abriendo directrices de lo que pueden ser desafíos en el futuro. Así que nada más de estar muy contentos por contar con ella. Yo no la veo realmente, así que supongo que está, John, y eso. Yo le daría paso. Solo recordar a los y las asistentes que al lado del botón en suma abajo pueden elegir el idioma en que quieren escuchar la conferencia, sea en inglés o en español, con la traducción.
Yo no puedo ver aquí si está. Ahí dice Alice que no la ve.
Sí, yo la estaba buscando en el listado y no la veo tampoco.
Sí.
¿Será que tiene problemas de conexión, Francisco?
Sí, yo eso mismo estaba viendo. Espere, denme un tantito, voy a conectarme con ella para ver, voy a escribirle, espérenme 2 segundos.
De pronto, a ver, no sé si hay una razón de dificultad de conexión, es que uno tiene que primero loguearse en Zoom, ¿no? Para acceder a la conferencia.
Con la cuenta que se inscribió.
Ella no se inscribió, yo creo. Y creo que aquí muchos no se inscribieron.
Sí, por ahí puede ser el problema también.
Sí, ahí yo le acabo de contactar, veamos que me responde, quizás tuvo algún problema al entrar.
Sí, me dicen, no sé si no se le podrán quitar los controles al Zoom, porque alguien me está escribiendo por ahí que no puede entrar, que le está pidiendo registrarse, etcétera, etcétera.
Buen día, profesor John Williams. Pues el link no está habilitado para que uno le pida registrarse. Hay una parte que dice cómo registrarse si es anfitrión, pero en la parte inferior le dice cómo ingresar como espectador. Entonces, la gracia es indicar que es ahí.
Voy a escribirle a la persona. Ah, ya. No, creo que ella ya pudo entrar, de Yolima. Muchas gracias, Carolina, que nos está mandando, me imagino que desde Bonn, un saludo para todos en el Día del Geógrafo. También nos mandan un saludo desde el IGAC. Mientras tanto voy a proyectar el libro. Un poquito más los contenidos que no los compartí todos por el tiempo. Que alguien me dijo que pusiera un poco más de amplio. Tal vez. Estos son los contenidos. El primer texto de la profesora Desnis, que es como una síntesis de todo lo que ella ha trabajado sobre teorías evolutivas de las ciudades. Un segundo texto sobre sistemas urbanos, un poco en la idea de teoría del sistema mundo y esas cosas. Yo he hecho tal vez unos 2 o 3 versiones del mismo. Pues 3 versiones, esta es la tercera por lo menos, y ha venido pues cambiando un poco. Este es un texto muy, muy interesante, el de Francisco con sus colegas chilenos, porque pues siempre estamos acostumbrados a ver el sistema urbano colombiano cuadricefálico, y digamos en la forma característica de Colombia, pero para mí fue una gran sorpresa ver pues el sistema urbano longitudinal chileno, eso sí muy, muy primacial con Santiago, ¿cierto? Y con creo 2 ciudades en los extremos también para organizar pues un territorio que es alargado, ¿no?
John,
Perdón,
perdone,
John,
ahí llegó la profesora Denise, me aparece.
Sí, bueno, listo. Entonces
Sí,
yo dejo de compartir para que ella pueda colocar las diapositivas.
est-ce que vous
Nice to meet
m'écoutez,
you.
madame?
Thank you.
Bonjour. Ah,
Bonjour. Thank you. Sorry for being late. Please continue.
Non, nous étions en train de d'attendre vous pour commencer votre intervention.
J'ai eu des difficultés de connexion, je vous prie de m'excuser.
No problem,
Voilà.
no.
J'espère ne pas vous avoir mis trop en retard.
No problem. Je ne sais pas si
Ok.
Francisco veut l'introduire un peu again, de nouveau. Francisco, una pequeña introducción y ya, otra vez.
Sí, sí, es que fíjese que por algo como que no escucho de repente los audios, puede ser por la traducción simultánea. Bueno, como les comenté hace un rato, Madame Denise, sí, Madame Denise Piumá es profesora, ¿cierto?, emérita de la Universidad de París I, Panteón Sorbonne, es una de las geógrafas cuantitativas más importantes, ¿cierto?, de los últimos años. Ha trabajado todo lo que tiene que ver en su teoría evolutiva de las ciudades, en la distribución de la población, cómo se comporta esa distribución, ¿cierto? En las diferentes ciudades, trayectorias funcionales, etcétera, todo anclado en esas tres escalas espaciotemporales que ella nos habla, como son desde la base, que son los actores sociales con sus relaciones sociales, que van formando escalas sucesivas ciudad y después estos sistemas de ciudades que quizás es la escala donde la profesora Denise Piumá ha hecho sus mayores contribuciones. Así que en virtud de la hora la dejo. Je suis très content de vous voir. Donc, on va vous écouter. O sea que la dejo.
Moi aussi. Thank you for this kind invitation. I am really delighted to participate in the celebration of this the event organized about your magnificent book, and I'll start trying to present something about the book and the main question today about urban hierarchies and evolution of urban system, with the question, can we imagine alternatives to urban growth that you have so well analyzed in this book and in all South American countries? And why that question? Because many challenges are questioning the very existence of urban system today. First, climatic change, inducing the necessity of an ecological transition. And of course, we don't know if cities are the best places to invent this massive adaptation which is required. Many times communication technologies have been hypothesized as instruments that would possibly reduce the urban concentrations. If you remember all what was written when at the moment of the invention of the railways, it was said that they could irrigate the territories and until the smallest rural settlements, which of course didn't occur. When the telephone was invented, there were also many dreams about the possibility of no longer moving for a bigger concentration in cities, and this didn't happen. And the same hypothesis was launched regarding internet, and until now this has not been observed. It was indeed in the recent development of the global pandemics that and the consecutive trend towards more teleworking in urban activities, that many people were imagining that it was possible to envisage migrations back towards the small and medium towns and even the rural areas. So what do we know indeed from all our books about urban growth? In the common opinion, the urban growth is caused by intentions of a variety of actors, either in national or urban policies, firms for their locational strategies, people decided to migrate to such and such a city. And those decisions are all thought as being possibly reversed because they are intentional, and those intentions may change perhaps. But when we look at statistically at what happened in a very large number of cities and over centuries, we finally discover that the trend to growth was almost equally distributed among the cities within a given territories, many local and temporal fluctuations, but this almost universal trend toward increasing size of cities, not only in population, but also in wealth. And this is very well summarized in the Jaibras model you have used, many of you, which represent the effect of a multiplicative growth, an addition of new population and activities that is proportional to the existing population. Rich get richer, preferential attachments are the same versions of this very basic model. And as the model has in first approximation good fit with the observation, we are happy because it helps explain the consistency of the urban spatial patterns and hierarchies. And at the same time, it also explain in a theoretical way why we observe not equal size of settlements, but these pervasive hierarchies. And we are able to develop that it is because an adaptation process through the adoption of innovation. You have demonstrated that, for instance, in the case of Chile over 1 century, also in Peru in the second half of 20th century, in Argentina. And we see on this example that the deviation to the statistical model are reproduced over time for a very long time period, showing that a variety in the spatial organization of urban system is possible. And if we follow the size evolution of cities over centuries in continents like Europe or in India, you see that there is a kind of homotetical development in all parts of the system that is very striking. And even if there are variants in the hierarchical spatial organization of urban system, those variants are really very stable structure over a long period of time. For instance, Céline Rosenblatt demonstrated that in Europe, only linking cities with a segment of 25 kilometers, cities are here agglomeration over 10,000 inhabitants. You raise the distance segment between 25 and 50 kilometers, you get the same pattern. And if you consider the higher level in the urban hierarchy with urban agglomerations over 100,000 inhabitants, with a stick between them of 100 or 150 kilometers, you have exactly the same 3 big regions one combining France and Spain represent the oldest big territorial construction in Royaume of Spain and France for centuries, whereas the two countries, Italy and Germany, that were unified later and had a competition during for more centuries between small territorial units governed by prince or bishops. And the third part, Eastern Europe, is with its very crystaller-like urban pattern, corresponds to a region that was systematically deforested and settled from the much later, from the 13th century on. So this persists over time, and it is a very sustainable way of serving and occupying the territory. We have found a similar organization all over the world in very, very different countries, very different in size and level of development. And from that, we can transfer a knowledge to the planners and decision makers that we are able to predict city growth and size variation, at least on a few decades. We know that metropolises may be very large and they are not monstrous. They survive and develop again over time. And the result, the urban hierarchies are the result of a complex process of interaction between adaptive strategies that are proactive, imitating or anticipating the further development of innovations in a coopetitive combining competition and collaboration, emulation for the development of different solutions. So we are confident in the robustness and sustainability of urban systems, knowing that there is nothing like a norm or an optimum ruling that. There are many variations, but on the whole, they are sustainable systems. On this type of reasoning, we have developed this ontology that we share all together of three levels of organization: the micro level of urban actors, and they are from their repeated and on very long historical period interactions, they develop new properties that are emerging. They are characteristic of an open, of an complex system. They don't obey to any of the urban actors, but they are collective constructions, meaning concepts like centrality, urban centrality, functions, even ambiance urbaine. And at the upper level of system of cities, we have those properties: hierarchical differentiation and functional diversity, the regularity of spatial pattern, that are also emerging properties at that level. And the levels in urban systems are defined by dimensions in space and time. They are, as I said, constructed by many, many interactions and flows that I will not detail, but that you know and have mentioned in many of your contributions. You have illustrations of those connections between cities here with the optic fiber between cities of Latin America. We have here another intuition of urban interactions by this mapping of the zones of urban influence around the medium-sized and large cities in Brazil. And we have this illustration in Uruguay using a commuting pattern between cities and demonstrating the importance of those urban interactions. So investigating in this what we call a co-evolution between cities of the same system, we discovered as early as 78 with the Terre Saint-Julien that indeed the transformations of cities, the qualitative transformations of the society and the economy followed almost the same path over time intervals between censuses, typically decades. And this was observed again by Fabien Paulus later on French cities. This is a multivariate representation of the socio-economic composition of the urban population over 4 decades in France. And all cities, you see, transform themselves in the same direction, less manufacturing, more services, and especially insurance business services during those years. And this was found again in the case of a child with this multivariate analysis with temporal transformation of the activities. And it is true also, as recalled by Anne Bretagnol and Fabien Paulus and Céline Vacchiani-Marcoso, in the case of North American cities, where, as we did for the French case, it is established a connection between the significance of the factors differentiating the economic profiles of the cities and an innovation wave, the one of the 19th century developing the manufacturing activities in the Great Lake region, which still characterize those cities compared to the rest of North American cities, where the service and construction sector are now much more developed than in those old Rust Belt. But the second dimension of the multivariate analysis demonstrates that during the second half of the 20th century occurred a hierarchical diffusion of innovation, mainly through the activities of finance, insurance, and real estate, business services, which are developed in the cities in yellow and orange, that are the largest ones of the system, whereas the older activities remain located in the smaller towns of the system. And this diffusion process and its connection with the pervasive differentiations in urban specialization is another source of deepening our explanation of the urban co-evolution, which is aid of interactive adaptation with feedbacks to the innovations that are mainly created in cities. And then we also better explain small deviations compared to the GBRAT statistical models. And we also understand why are so prominent the emerging properties of our systems. We also can better explain the bifurcations of the individual urban trajectories that may be linked to a more advanced or a more pregnant adaptation to any innovation wave, as illustrated here in the case of Bolivia. And also on the map, we see that the trajectories characterize some urban regions. And at the individual level of cities, we are able to identify, recognize, and interpret with their changing role in the system bifurcation in the trajectory, for instance, Marseille being a colonial port, and then having a recession with the loss of those external investments, and again taking part in urban development as one among the largest European cities. You see the recession of Detroit linked with automobile industry, whereas in Dallas, we have this increasing trend relatively to the other cities of the system because of the development of the oil industry. So we imagine our ontology of urban systems as being always submitted to a renewed flow of innovation that may induce the development of cities if they success in adapting to each wave, they become metropolis at the top of the hierarchies. If they specialize too much in a particular innovation wave, they may enter a decline cycle because not being able to adapt to further wave of innovation. And in this decline cycle, we find many ghost towns, the Rust Belt, and so on. Few of them are able to restructure and enter again the virtuous circle of adaptation to innovation. So we have developed models, multi-agent system models, in order to reconstruct these past urban trajectories and being able to test the rules that are integrated in those models representing the knowledge hypothesis we have, the explanative hypothesis we have. And we think it is necessary to have this step if, as we are asked frequently to do so, if we are asked to make predictions about the future of the systems. And we have indeed three major steps in the urban evolution. The first step during the emergence of cities as such, after the Neolithic period, during centuries, they were heavily constrained by their local environment in terms of resource and being submitted to natural hazards and predations from the neighbors. When entering after the first industrial revolution, a cycle of open development, apparently without any limits, and the network of cities from all sides now covers the entire planet. But of course, we now know that they are indeed still environmental constraint in terms of availability of mineral resources, energy, and so on, that may hamper further development of cities. But the good news is that having now as a way of inhabiting the planet this very dense network of towns and cities, we have this special organization for diffusing, propagating the demand for regulations, new incentives that are coming from transnational organization top down, and also collecting all the local initiatives that are developed and may bottom up also irrigate the urban system to mitigate the climatic change, for instance. So I won't develop this series of models we are proud to have made, because it was the first time in geography that multi-agent systems were applied in geographical analysis in '96. some of our hypotheses were comforting our ontological description of urban system in terms of emergence, possible emergence of an hierarchy, but under the constraint of a renewed innovation flow. But at that time, we were not totally convinced of the validity of the parameters we had estimated, and we were sure that the conditions were sufficient, but we couldn't demonstrate that they were necessary to produce the urban hierarchy. Here are illustrations of a work which also gathered France Berambas, Hélène Mathian, Lena Sanders. Stéphane Burat was a computer scientist. And you find reconstructed, as you have observed in history, the emerging urban hierarchy over a 2,000-year period. So this model is really a geographical model because the agents are collective agents, heterogeneous. They have different urban functions and attributes. And the rules are the stylized fact we got from our previous statistical analysis. And we made progress with computer scientists at first because they develop independently successive models, but with different computing language and with not much possibility of reutilization. It was doctorate students. But recently we were able to work really on a daily basis with a full team of computer scientists that have developed a magnificent platform for social scientists, which is called OpenMall, and they are propagating it as Trampoline today, using evolutionary algorithms and distributed computing, so very advanced technology, in order to better explore the behavior of those multi-agent models. And we have applied them to Europe, North America, South Africa. And Clémentine Cotineau made it on the cities of the former Soviet Union. Her model is called Marius. I won't develop her full applications, but just this small graph demonstrating that if you try using a simple stochastic Gibra model to predict the observed population of the cities at the end of the period, starting with the population they had at the beginning, you have a not so bad proxy, but not a very good prediction of the observed population through the simulation. Whereas if you use the model including interurban interactions, then you get a much better prediction of the actual observed population through your simulation. So from those work with the model, we are now almost certain that we don't see in the urban evolution any counter-urbanization, as was hypothesized by Brian Berry in '76. We see what we observe on the contrary is an increasing hierarchization, more and more inequalities in size among cities, which is more pronounced than the one predicted with the stochastic model of Gibra. And through two geographical processes that are the attraction of metropolises and the simplification from below of the urban hierarchies, because smaller towns are short-circuited by the long distance connections that are used by the largest cities. And we also found with Anne Bretagnol that there were very large global, we call them today, cities, at least in the Middle Age in Europe, and probably in China, because the cities that are at the head of a system are connected with the other systems, and they make benefits for their own development from these long distance connections between different systems. So we have indeed in our urban systems today a kind of embedded dynamic trends. We know that it is not demography, but economy that drives the co-opetition, the co-evolution of cities. We see that nowadays the transnational firms invest at first in the large metropolises and in their central parts very often. We see that the financial groups, the global financial groups, invest in the periphery of cities in developing countries to make benefit from the valuation of rural land into urbanized ones. And we also know from surveys that urban residents, the same who declare, oh, I would like to go to the countryside and live in a small town, but at the same time, they look for 2 jobs at least for the household, and they need universities for their children, airports to travel, at least before the pandemic, it was the rule. And then they contribute by their behavior also to this continuous growth of the largest cities. And we observe that we have more case of shrinking cities in terms of not only population but also economic deprivation in the lower parts of the urban hierarchy. A last, in this index, this Human Development Index that has been computed by the United Nations Habitat Service demonstrates that the human development reach higher level in cities rather than in the corresponding country. And of course, with a big deviation in the developing countries, the deviation is smaller in the more advanced countries, but it is still there. So this is another rationale for believing in the future of our cities. And as geographer, and as you demonstrate in your book, we can conceptualize urban systems as the manifestation of a territorial intelligence. It is a resilient tool invented for managing the environment with creative and proactive adaptation from technology, but not only technical, with also societal engineering, inventing many institutions that enable this way of life. And so we may be confident that cities will continue to adapt to try to multiply the resources and improve the quality of living space and urban life. Thank you for your attention, and congratulations again for this book. I liked very much.
Bueno, muchas gracias, profesora Pimá, por su hermosa presentación. Yo creo que pudimos observar ahí la amplitud de sus trabajos, ¿cierto? Y también toda esta visión desde los sistemas de ciudades que finalmente nos permite ver estas dos grandes propiedades que usted habló y con todos estos desarrollos de los modelos, ¿cierto? Tanto la jerarquía como los temas funcionales. Vamos a abrir ahora el espacio para las preguntas. La primera pregunta aquí que veo que Vivian está levantando la mano, entonces yo le voy ahí a dar para que pueda ver, para que pueda hablar. Tienes que desbloquear tu micrófono nomás, Vivian. Y estamos. Por si acaso ahí no se lo escucha, o yo no lo escucho. Sí. Parece no está. Ahí, Reborati también, ahí, activa su micrófono nomás. Ah, ya. Ya. Bueno, entonces yo me puedo permitir una pregunta. La teoría de escalamiento urbano ha emergido con fuerza en los últimos años para comprender las funciones de la ciudad y qué es lo que está sucediendo un poco en el fondo en su evolución en esas distintas, valga la redundancia, funciones. ¿Cómo evalúa usted esta teoría finalmente para dar respuesta a los procesos que van ocurriendo en la ciudad o que pudiesen ocurrir en la ciudad, puesto que parecería finalmente, y por lo que usted nos indica, que la cantidad de población es fundamental para comprender la ciudad? No sé si la hago en francés también, o usted tradujo o entendió mi pregunta. ¿Es que vous avez compris ou...
Pas tout à fait,
Pas
non, j'ai
tout.
peur de ne pas avoir compris toute la question. Désolée.
Bon, d'accord. Je vais la poser rapidement. La théorie de urban scaling, les lois d'échelle, a été
Oui.
développée avec force ces dernières années. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez par rapport à cette théorie des lois d'échelle pour contribuer à donner des réponses dans les différentes fonctions urbaines qui peuvent développer la ville à futur? Et qu'est-ce que vous pensez par rapport à cette théorie?
Je peux répondre en anglais. Hein? Thank you for this very good question. I think that the scaling law, the theory based on the scaling laws, is only a partial possible explanation. It is the equivalent of a statistical model. It doesn't include enough social science processes to be considered as a complete theory of urban system. However, it may be very helpful to tell us at what level of performance can be expected from a city of a given size. For instance, we know, but urban planners knew that a long time ago, that you have to develop, when you develop any urban network inside a city, you have a higher cost per inhabitant if you are in a small town than if you are in a large city, because you can make scale economies in developing the infrastructure network for very large cities. And so if you want to compare and measure for whatever purpose the level of performance of a small town and a large one with respect to the spatial organization of its infrastructure, you cannot use the same index, the same benchmark. You have to take into account the size of the city. The same for, and this because the scaling law in the case of infrastructures is sublinear. Exponent is below 1. When exponents are above 1, in the case of supralinear scaling relationships, then you may expect much better performances of large cities than you cannot expect the same level also from a town and a large city. So you can if you can tune if you want to equalize with equity, for instance, the tax system in a country, you can play with this. But there is a big condition to be able to do that. It is to be sure of the exponent of the scaling law. And for that, we have to do a lot of experiments using relevant data. And so many times, the urban data that are provided are not relevant for the question we ask about the quality of life in the city, about the social cohesion of the city, about so we have still to invent and to realize a lot of analytical studies before being able to use the scaling laws as an instrument, reliable instrument for urban planning.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour la réponse. Gracias por su respuesta. Williamton tiene la palabra.
Hay varias preguntas en el chat.
Ok.
I don't know if yo no sé si el traductor las puede leer en inglés.
¿Cómo?
La primera, la de Antonio Córdoba.
Sí.
¿Hablo o lee las preguntas, Francisco?
Ya, sí, no sé, porque
O Francisco, léelas
yo la leo, sí, y después
léela
la
en
digo en francés. Sí,
no, léala
en
en francés,
español
que ahí
sería.
está. En el chat está para todos, la pueden leer, entonces usted la lee
Sí.
solo en francés.
D'accord. Est-ce que je veux dédier, madame, les questions qui sont dans le chat. Excusez-moi le français, qu'il y a longtemps que je parle pas, donc
non, je vous en prie, vous m'aidez beaucoup.
Antonia
Merci de votre aide.
fait la question. Quel exemple vous pouvez nous partager sur l'intelligence du territoire et quel paquet s'analyse et quel outil statiquement on peut utiliser pour faire ça?
L'intelligence territoriale, c'est... territorial intelligence is a kind, it's a counterpart of artificial intelligence. It is a posteriori consideration. We, when observing a very large number of cities, of urban systems over a very long period of time, you see to what extent they are resilient and sustainable compared to all the events and individual life that occur inside them. And it is really a system that proves its ability to persist over time, to change, to transform its components. It was in the past compared to living bodies, but it is not. It is not a living body. It is a societal construction. But it is not ruled. It is most of the time not a voluntary organization, but the expression of how societies behave in space and how they tackle with the space and with the environment. And they do rather well, except of course of this climatic threat we have built. But during the time of existence of cities, the human population has grown so much from a few hundred millions to 7 billions. The way of life of most of the individuals has been improved. Being a woman, I always think of the washing machine and the time I could have spent in my life washing instead of trying to develop theories. But so it is not a demonstrated concept. It is an a posteriori evaluation of what is the carrying capacity of those systems for managing the life of such a large number of persons on such a large diversity on planetary environments. And until now, it works. It is not a good definition of territorial intelligence, but it is a suggestion that before destroying that, look at what it does.
Merci beaucoup, madame. Rosanna fait la suivante question. Quel rôle développe la métropolisation dans les systèmes urbains européens, nord-américains, latino-américains? Et est-ce que si vous pouvez aussi de signaler quelques différences de ce rôle de métropole dans les systèmes urbains pour chaque grand système urbain?
Yes, all national urban systems are not following exactly the same path, and some of them are highly metropolized, like the French urban system. You have a ratio of 6 between the largest city and the second one. On the contrary, you have more polycentric patterns, even in Europe, like the Randstad in the Netherlands, or in Germany, you also have a more polycentric pattern because of those historical and geopolitical reasons we have said before. But they are all those different structures are viable. They continue with their own structure and they evolve in a way which is similar from one system to the next. There is nothing like a convergence towards a same type of distribution, provided that all are hierarchical. So we know that, for instance, the contrast in size are higher in North America than in the older systems from Europe and Asia. The probability of developing big metropolis is larger in North America. And even if you consider cities in Asia, and the biggest one now located in China, they are just adapted, their big size is somehow adapted to the size of the population of the country and the size of the country itself. So there is there are discourses sometimes against, sometimes in favor of metropolises. Actually, discussing with economists frequently, we don't know. We observe that cities continue growing and the trend is not ended. The rationale behind that is in interurban competition for resources, for investment, for finance, for skills, of attracting people with higher skills, in developing more innovation and trying to impose those innovation to the global market. So this is the main driving force behind metropolization, and it is linked with capitalism. Capitalism is also, as cities are, a way of connecting different resources and exploiting even the long distance resources, multiplying the resources from the interconnection of all of them. So I don't see what could be the limitations. Hopefully, we will not observe a big catastrophe at the world scale. Until now, the only periods where you see that urban hierarchies are converging towards a less unequal situation was during the war, during the last 2 world wars. And people think of pandemics as a possible driver of such a dispersal of population and activities towards smaller settlements. Until now, we cannot see it. What we see in the growth of the last months, the last semesters, is business as usual. The same trends as before the pandemics.
Muchas
Concentration.
gracias. Muchas gracias, Madame Pima. Cristian Sánchez tiene una pregunta que también está en el chat. No sé si quiere hacerla él mismo o se la traduzco ahí. Abrí. Cristian.
¿Me escuchan?
Oh, I can see your question. It is
No
about
te escuchamos, Cristian.
Okay, it's okay.
population growth in a border territory.
Sí.
Does the city have to adapt to this model? Oh, no, the city don't have to adapt to this model. I said it is not a norm. It is not any optimum as well. It is just an observation. And so your question is about the border location, which apparently gives another growth impulse to the city because the transit sustain growth. I don't exactly understand your question. How the city could refuse the transit?
Oui, c'est que je pense qu'il peut un peu s'intéresser par rapport à la migration, je pense.
Oui.
Que si les modèles, parce qu'il y a plusieurs pays, principalement dans l'Amérique latine, qu'il y a beaucoup de contacts et beaucoup de populations qui transitent aller-retour, etc. Donc, si les modèles que vous avez développés considèrent, c'est ça. Lo que yo dije, le expliqué un poco, precisé, es que si era el tema de la migración en estas ciudades de borde con los tránsitos que van y de vuelta en los modelos, que creo que puede apuntar un poco la pregunta. Ale, vamos.
No, in our model, we don't have developed a specific part of what is an ordinary function of cities, which is to accommodate a new population of migrants, which very often arrive with a lower level of skills and ability to adapt. This is normal because they come either from previous rural areas or from border countries that have a less developed economies, and the migrants come to find better jobs and life conditions. And this has been in the past a big advantage indeed for the countries who were able to welcome such what you call a transit population, because it is a part of human capital which is integrated with, of course, many individual and moral difficulties many times, but this happened all in the history of cities, either in Europe or Asia or America, always. It is right, an interesting part of the urban development. We don't enter in this level of detail in our model, but this process is analyzed for itself by many geographers and demographers. And I think since the work about migration in Britain by Ravenstein, we have learned a lot about the way migrants can arrive. We know how they select themselves from the population of the departure country, how they manage to integrate the destination societies with different strategies, how there are return migration after a while, and more connections with the country of origin. And I think it is part, they are a complete part of the building of this territorial intelligence, because they represent the actual linkage, one of the linkages between cities, which is also made of those human and cultural contacts. And this is learned today by many social sciences, including demography, culturalists, anthropologists, and so on, as well as geographers. It is a very important process that has favored the interurban connections during all the historical time. Yeah. And of course, when the differences in language, in way of life, in skills is very important, the integrative capacities of cities are sometimes very difficult to change and to make more ethic and human to face the migration problem.
Merci beaucoup, madame. Il y a une question de professeur William Montoya. Qu'est-ce que pensez-vous, comment voyez-vous le développement de la discipline de la géographie actuellement? Et qu'est-ce que pensez-vous par rapport à l'Europe ou l'Amérique latine? Qu'est-ce que vous pensez un peu le rôle de la géographie, les géographes, etc. actuellement, et qu'est-ce qu'il passe en Europe et l'Amérique latine?
Oh, thank you for the question. I'm indeed very impressed by the way in Latin America geographers have organized to share their activities, their information, their journals, and to the book you have coordinated, both of you, Francisco and John, is a really marvelous example of this state and level, good level of cooperation. So congratulations for that. I just finished a chapter that will be published in the book the International Geographical Union will publish for the 100th anniversary next year. And the book is about, the chapter is about the role of internet in the internationalization of geography. And I developed the idea that indeed geographers are now at the forefront of social sciences because of geolocation, of all the new big data that are now influencing and developing the role of social sciences in science and for the societies. And because of that, everybody now has in his or her pocket a smartphone providing geographical information. All the informations are connected through their location. And so it is really, it opens a way for new developments where geographers have to insist that they know how to handle the spatial organization of information, the differentiation among territories. And so I'm very optimistic for the future of the discipline. And I hope it will be so, even if of course, in Europe, as usual, we like to develop conflicts, contestations, contradictions between ideologies, people being in favor of a more cultural or even postmodern aspect, or even behavioral, corporal, minoritarians. Of course, all those avenues are very interesting developments for geography as well. But don't let us forget about all the accumulated knowledge that we also have from the traditional geography, which has developed the knowledge about cities, regions, and the connection with physical geography, as in classical regional geography, and the locational analysis, spatial analysis that was developed during the 70s and 90s, which is still necessary to handle the big data that fortunately we have now at disposal to a better integration of the micro level. So the behavioral level of individuals will be better known, that we were able only to guess it from aggregated geographical units before. We will progress in this direction. But I think provided that we still use the knowledge we have about the aggregated zones we are used to analyze. Do you agree, John?
Muchas gracias. Me sigo cómoda. Muchas gracias. Estamos ya cerrando. John Montoya, ya se nos acabó el tiempo. Y John Montoya va a decir las últimas palabras. Yo solo despedirme antes que las dé. Muchas gracias, Madame Piuman, por estar acá. Me encantó verla y usted sabe que usted es una inspiración para mí en la geografía, así que nada más de eso.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. I'm delighted to have met so many of you together today, and hope to see you in a physical way sometimes
Sí.
in the future.
Bueno,
Bye
j'espère.
bye.
Muchas gracias, Francisco. Muchas gracias, Francisco. También quiero decirle que no es solo una inspiración para Francisco, también ha sido una inspiración para muchos geógrafos en América Latina. Sus trabajos los vengo por lo menos mirando desde los años 1990 en mi maestría, y realmente no tengo palabras para señalar la alegría que me produce que nos haya acompañado tanto con el libro como en el día de hoy. De verdad que esta es una conferencia de un valor muy significativo en nuestro proyecto de formación de geógrafos. Espero que de pronto podamos conocernos en persona también en el año entrante en el encuentro de geógrafos de la Unión Geográfica Internacional, que eventualmente un grupito de Colombia irá a ir porque está organizándose. Y no, un gran aplauso y muchas gracias por sus apoyos, por su conferencia.